Hey guys, M.L.Behrman here. It's a windy night, full moon's up. Thought I'd crouch down here next to the Jeep for a while and try and do 3 questions. So tonight, the lost ship of the desert, the Cactus Cat, and a spooky story. Be right back. Hey guys, it's really windy tonight, so hopefully the camera isn't going to be shaking too much. I apologize if it does. Anyway, welcome to all the new subscribers and viewers. Glad to have you along. I love reading comments, so if you've got any weird stories you want to share with all of us, I'd love to see them. All right, well, with that in mind, let's get to the first question. Have you ever heard of the lost ship of the desert? Yeah, I have. As a matter of fact, it's called the Lost Ship of the Desert, the Lost Ship of the Mojave. And what it is basically is down near the Salton Sea, supposedly there's an ancient shipwreck that has treasure in it, of course. And it's been reported variously that it was a Viking ship, that it was a pirate ship, it was a Spanish pearl ship, or it was a Spanish supply ship that was supplying the Spaniards when they were exploring Southern California. Now, there's a wealth of material on it, and it'd be a great episode, but I've never done one, and I'm not gonna do one for one simple reason. One of my good friends is the Lost Ship of the Desert guy himself. His name's John. He runs a website called Lost Ship of the Desert, and he's got another one called Desert. And he also just started a new Facebook page called Mojave Roadhouse on Facebook. So it's facebook.com/Mojave Roadhouse. And he started to have interviews with people that discuss everything from paranormal to history to whatever. I did a interview with him last month, a video interview live from the field. It was pretty cool, about the Sandman and the Yucca Man and the various hairiest cryptids seen out in the desert. And if you want to go, I'll put a link in the description below to that interview, to his page, and also to his Lost Ship of the Desert YouTube channel, because I know he's got like hours of material on it. So if you're into lost treasure and specifically the Lost Ship of the Desert, John is your man. So check him out. All right, number 2. Have you ever heard of the Cactus Cat? Yeah, I have. The Cactus Cat is one of those, it's like a cowboy story to me. Supposedly, in the late 1800s, there was a creature they used to see out in the desert, about the size of a cat, a big bobcat, and it was covered with spines, like a porcupine. You know, instead of fur, it had spines. And it had one particular habit. It used to be called the Cactus Cat because it used to go up to cactuses and scratch them and then lick the sap. And the sap would ferment, and the cat would get drunk or high or something and then go off on a craze tearing things up. So to be drunk as a cactus cat or to see a cactus cat that's what the story was. So it sounds, you know, like your classic cowboy campfire story. Now I will say, don't scratch and lick a cactus. I mean, I see so many survival things where they're like, yeah, you can cut a cactus and drink it. That's a great way to get sick or dead if you don't know exactly what you're doing. As a matter of fact, like 12 years ago, I was out in the desert and I saw the search and rescue party. We're out looking for 2 college students that had read about you could eat seeds from a cactus and get high like shamans used to do. And so they found the right cactus and they ate the seeds, but then they got so wasted they stumbled out into the desert and got lost, and one of them died, and the other one, they found him, but he was really sick. So if you see a cactus cat, leave it alone, and if you want to be a cactus cat, leave it alone. Okay, number 3. Number 3 is a combo, and it's a combo in that it's one question I get asked a lot with a new question. And the question I get asked a lot is, have you ever been scared or freaked out at some of the areas you've gone to in connection with your stories or expeditions? And I usually say no, because I'm there years after something happened, or it's in the daytime, or occasionally I have someone with me, so it's not quite the same thing. So I don't really get creeped out. A couple times it's been weird, but that's not to say I've never been spooked or spooked myself or been scared out camping or filming or researching a story. And this story dovetails with the other question, which is how did you start getting into investigating paranormal stuff or recording it? I'm not really an investigator per se. I'm more a chronicler. I love finding stories, researching them, and then telling them, bring them to people. And so anyway, those two questions dovetail with the story. And the story goes is this. Like I'm sure many of you, have always loved paranormal, strange stuff, creepy things, scary things. And growing up, I had read tons of books and I watched all the TV shows and movies, and I just loved it. And I reached a point where I was like, it's one thing to read about stuff and hear about it on the radio, on TV, whatever. But I want to go there. I want to go see some of these locations or places that people have claimed things have happened or seen something, or that has a reputation for strange stuff happening. And flashback 30 years to 1997, 20 years, it was the 50th anniversary of Roswell. The Roswell crash happened at Roswell in July 1947. So 50 years later, July 1997, they were going to have a anniversary party, a 3-day party in Roswell. So I'm going. I'm going to go. That's going to be, a field trip. Now at the time, I was splitting my time between working in Florida for 4 or 5 months and working in California 4 or 5 months. So I'd go back and forth once or twice a year. And it just happened that I would have a month off in between, and that month would be July. So I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm have to go from California to Florida. I'm going to drive down. I'm going to stop at Roswell and party for 3 days, check it out, and then head down to Florida. But then I thought, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take 3 weeks, because I had the whole month. I'm going to take 3 weeks, and I'm going to camp the whole way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a list of like 6 cool, spooky, paranormal, UFO, whatever happenings, and I'm going to go visit each spot in a different state. And I'm going to stay a night there, overnight, and check it out. So I made my list, and it went like in California, I was going to check out Giant Rock and the Integratron and that whole UFO thing. Then I was going to head over to Arizona and go into the Apache Sitgri Forest and look for the Travis Walton abduction site, which is Travis Walton. If you've ever seen the movie Fire in the Sky, it was a real scary thing about a logger who got abducted, supposedly got abducted and probed and whatever. And that happened there. And then from there, I was going to cross over into New Mexico to the Magawan Rim in the forest and check out the Magawan monster site, which was supposed to be a monster up in the mountains, like a Bigfoot type creature. Then from there I was going to head down. I was going to cruise through Socorro, New Mexico, which in 1964 a police officer named Lonnie Zamora had a UFO encounter there. So I was going to check that out on my way to Roswell. And then Roswell was going to be the highlight of the trip. I'd spend a day or two there. And then from there I was going to drop down into Texas and go to Marfa to see the Marfa lights, which is a phenomenon that people report up to this day of strange lights being seen. And then from there I was going to go to Boggy Creek, the Texarkana border, to Boggy Creek and see the legend of Boggy Creek. And from there I was going to drop down into a little place called Blackwater, Florida, to see the skunk ape, or where the skunk ape had lately been reported. And then I'd be home. So I was like, okay, this is going to be the expedition of the lifetime for weird paranormal shit. And so I got to California, and my girlfriend at the time, she wasn't living in California, but she's like, I want to go with you. I want to camp across the U.S. And she go, I'll fly out, meet you in California, and then, I'll camp with you down to Florida. I'm like, okay, cool, but know this, I'm not going to like hotels and nice areas. I'm going way out there in creepy areas and do some poking around. And she's like, oh, I don't care. She didn't care about any of that. She just loved to go out in remote areas. She loved remote camping. So I'm like, okay, come along. And so while I was waiting for her to fly out, she had to get done with work. I went and checked out Giant Rock, and it was really cool, and explored all there, and looked at the Integratron and all that stuff. And all these things I'm mentioning, if you don't know them, you can Google them, or you can see episodes on my site or whatever. And she flew out, and I met her at LAX, and we got all our supplies, jumped in the Jeep, and headed off to Arizona for the first out-of-state stop, which was the Travis Walton Abduction site. And the Apache Sitgreave Forest is a huge national forest, and it has some really remote areas. And at the time, this is 97, so like I didn't have a GPS. I didn't have all the stuff I carry now. It's just a map and some guides. And I couldn't really find the exact place. I guess it was a place called Turkey Springs or something way up in the mountains. And I got close on another mountain, but it was remote. I mean, I got in there, and you read on the map these forest roads, and you think, oh, it's a road. And then you get out there, and it's like an overgrown goat trail. And they crisscross, and they taper off, and then you don't know where this one leads. And so I ended up getting lost a couple times, backtracking, and it was getting more and more remote. And I'm thinking, like, God, I only got one spare tire. I don't have like a satellite. Like now I have a satellite phone and a personal beacon and all that stuff. But at that time I was like, kind of naive. And so we go farther and farther and farther and farther and farther. Finally we end up at the top of this mountain. And I'm like, okay, I know we're real close. It might not be the exact spot, but we're close. And it was remote. Big pine trees, and it hadn't been logged in the last 50, 60 years because it was pretty thick brush. And we found a spot where there was a stump that had been cut with an axe or a saw at one point 100 years ago because it was totally smooth. And we're like, wow, this is cool. This is a perfect table to camp at. So we set up the tent, parked the Jeep, and it got dark fast. And when I say dark, I mean dark, like a bag over your head dark. There was no moon, no stars. We're in the deep woods up there. And the thing about it, it was quiet. I mean, it was still. There was no breeze, nothing, no insects, no birds, squirrels, whatever, nothing. It was like, I'm like, wow, this place is either really shot out or it's, like if you were going to get abducted, this was the place to do it. So we set up our camp. And at the time, you couldn't have a fire. It was a non-burn time. So we just had a little, cooking stove. So we had dinner, and the one thing my girlfriend carried was a deck of cards and a little bag of casino chips, like poker chips, because we'd play poker at night for like an hour. And so we set up. The other thing was she had a little lantern, little battery lantern that she loved. It didn't kick out much light, but it was cool. We put that on the stump, put our cards and our little chips. And at the time, I didn't have a good flashlight. Now, today, I got 3 flashlights on me when I'm out there. And all I had was one of those like Jack's spotlights, like deer hunters use and stuff that has a pistol grip, and it plugs into the cigarette lighter power thing in your Jeep. And I had run it down pretty much the night before, so it was in the Jeep charging. So we're sitting at this tree stump playing poker in the middle of the woods, the alien abduction spot, or right next to it. And I was laughing to myself. I'm like, this is so bizarre. 3 weeks ago I was thinking about going out to try and do a UFO or paranormal expedition, and here I am in the middle of the woods playing poker by lantern light. So we played for an hour. It was cool. And after that, we decided to go lay in these hammocks. We had bought these cheapo rope hammocks, and we strung them between two trees that were right next to the campsite because the trees were thick. It was perfect. And we decided, well, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to lay in the hammocks and just, chill. So we did that. We were laying in the hammocks, and I think we'd been there maybe 10, 15 minutes. And all of a sudden I hear something making its way through the underbrush, maybe 50 yards at most. Just beyond. The light from this lantern was like, a lighter would give you a better light, but it was just beyond the light, and it was moving slow. And I thought, oh, it's some sort of animal. I could hear it, and then I could hear it was like creeping, and when I say creeping, it was like it would step on a stick, and you wouldn't hear a stick like just like snap, and then it would go on. You'd hear like, and then the next movement. So it was trying to be stealthy, and it went in a perfect arc around us, right out to about front, and then it stopped. In a couple minutes, it started again, and so over the course of this took like 10, 15 minutes. I heard it totally transverse our front. And I thought, oh, well, he's moved on. Maybe it's a coyote, I don't know, a deer. And then I heard it behind us perfectly. And then I lost it for a sec, the sound. And I'm talking with my girlfriend. And don't ask me how. We managed to get in an argument. So this argument's starting, and I'm trying to pay attention to her. Then I'm also kind of, one ear's cocked for whatever. And sure enough, I hear it coming around again. I hear a couple sticks break, then I hear some leaves rustle, and then I hear it come all the way out front again and stop. And I thought I saw like a tree limb, do that. And so now my attention's like, and I'm like, well, this thing circled our camp once, which isn't that strange in the wilderness. A deer or something will, if it's checking you out, go around your camp. But I'm kind of, from where we are, it's dark, it's still, like I say, the whole UFO thing, I'm like, keying in on this. And my girlfriend's still arguing with me. She's, and so finally, I thought I heard again when I saw the tree branch move again. I go, shh, because I'm trying to hear. And instead of hushing, she all of a sudden goes, don't you shush me, blah, 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 blah. Just, zero situational awareness, just lays into me. And now I can't hear anything except her having a rag here. And, I know this thing's out in front of me, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to DEFCON 4 here. So I flip out of my hammock, and I walk back to the Jeep real quick. Now, I'd left my gun belt hanging on the side mirror of the Jeep. So I took it off, and I buckled it on, and I walked back out between the hammocks, to look straight ahead where I knew this thing was. And all of a sudden, she's like, and I look down at her, and she's like, I go, what, did you hear something? Did you see something? And she's just like, all of a sudden she goes, I'm getting in the tent, and just jumps out of the thing, the hammock, runs over to the tent, grabs the lantern as she goes in the tent, turns off the lantern. So now I'm standing there completely in the black. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if she saw something. I don't know if she heard something. I don't know if something's out here. I can't see anything. So I'm standing with my hand on my gun, just all eyes and ears, just dialed in. And 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, it's hard to tell when you're in that situation with your adrenaline and all of a sudden, I hear it distinctly turn and start walking away, or moving away. It's not like I was hearing crunch, crunch, crunch. I was just hearing something moving through the brush. And I hear it moving away, straight out from me, going along, and it gets fainter and fainter and fainter and fainter. Then after like a minute, I hear an owl start hooting over here. And then I hear insects start. And then it's like someone threw a switch and the forest came back alive. Now, that's usually a sign of predators around you or something pretty big. I don't know what it was. It could have been a deer. My mind's thinking like, okay, Sasquatch is right out there checking us out. He's been circling our camp. So I was freaked, I was a little freaked out, and I stood there another 5 minutes, and all I heard was normal animal noises, and everything seemed calm. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever it is, it satisfied its curiosity. And that's the other thing. I didn't feel menaced like I've seen bear and bobcat and other predators, and it didn't feel like there was something looking at me like part of the food chain. It just, something was curious about what was going on. And I went back to the tent. I get in the tent. She's zipped up in a sleeping bag, totally quiet, doesn't say anything. I lay there for another 30 minutes, listening, don't hear anything, fall asleep. Wake up in the morning, sun's shining, birds are singing, squirrels are jumping through the trees. It's paradise on earth. And my girlfriend's up at the stove making coffee. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever it was, I was freaking myself out or something. I get up and go over to the stump, and I'm like, yeah, what did you see last night? What happened? She's like, what do you mean? I go, well, all of a sudden you just jumped out of your hammock and ran back in the tent. And she goes, yeah, you went and got your gun. I thought you were going to shoot me. I'm like, wait, whoa. You thought I was going to shoot you? I mean, she goes, yeah, we were arguing, and all of a sudden you just got up and went and buckled your gun on, like, conversation over. And I was like, no. I was freaking because I was hearing something walking around out there. And that's why I got my gun. I would, believe me, if I have an argument, I'm not going to shoot somebody over stupid stuff. So we had a bit of a laugh over that. And then we decided to pack up and move on because we were like, okay, one night's enough in this place. And we got to find our way out, which we did. And we moved on down to New Mexico, where we had another adventure after the Magawan monster. So that's the story. That was a time where I was spooked, and it was also my first real expedition out looking for stuff. And yeah, it was pretty crazy. Now the rest of that trip was equally insane, and I could give you 3 more stories from that trip alone. I'll just give you a real quick version. We got to, by the time we got, nothing happened at Magawan except for camping in the horrible electric storm. And then Roswell was a bit of a disappointment because it was so commercialized. I mean, it was like, you go to Denny's and it was like, have the alien burger and, crap like that. So I was kind of disappointed. Then, like all couples do, we started fighting even more. So by the time we got to Texas, we didn't even go to Marfa. And then I wanted to go over to Boggy Creek, and we didn't go to Boggy Creek because we were arguing and ended up camping somewhere else. And by the time we got to Florida, to Blackwater for the skunk ape, I was ready to trade her to the skunk ape for a head of cabbage. And we broke up right after that when we got to Florida. So it was an interesting trip. So anyway, I've probably bored you blabbing way too long. But anyway, if you're still with me, great. Love to see your comments. Keep watching, and I will be back next time on